ether. They have been obliged to define this ether in mathematical terms. It is infinitely rigid, infinitely elastic, infinitely tenuous, infinitely imponderable. That is to say, it is not matter at all in any ordinary sense of the word, for it possesses qualities involving infinities, and is therefore rather theoretical than actual. In the same way, nobody knows what electricity really is. There's a story of a professor who was declaiming to this effect before a class of students and wound up by thundering dramatically, "Does anybody know what electricity is?" A student in the last sentence aroused him, and he sprang from habit. Then, meeting the cold eye of the professor, he became embarrassed, stammered, "I knew, sir, but I've forgotten." "Just my luck," retorted the learned man. "There was only one man in the whole world who knew, and he has forgotten." If we take even so simple a phenomenon as the expansion of bodies through the action of heat, we are equally involved in mystery. There is a sort of theory that for some reason the molecules of a body move more violently than when what is called heat is applied to them, because heat is conceived of as a mode of manifestation, or accompanying a tribute of motion, because these molecules are themselves quite theoretical. Their existence has been invented in order to explain certain phenomena of chemical action. These imaginary molecules are composed of yet more imaginary atoms, which were defined, as the name implies, as ultimate, indivisible particles of hom- homo- homogeneous matter. Homogeneous matter. But that was just a century ago, and since then all sorts of other phenomena have been observed, which make it impossible any longer or to imagine the atom as indivisible. Hence has arisen a new hypothesis, that of electrons, and when you inquire of a physicist to whether these electrons are matter, he may tell you that on the whole, the least unreasonable theory is that which supposes them to be merely stains in the ether. In other words, the things which are have been resolved by science into combinations of things which are not. If you ask a modern chemist or physicist for his definition of matter, he will reply to you in terms almost identical with those which were used by the philosophers of the Middle Ages to define spirit. The astrologer is more frank than the professor of the sciences. He does not endeavor to conceal his ignorance beneath an elaborate embroidered cloak of metaphysical phrases. He is content to accept the dictum of the schoolmen, exunt omnium in mysterium, everything that flows out into mystery, by which they meant that if you follow any idea far enough, if you keep on asking how and why and what, instead of resting contented with a superficial halfway explanation, the result is always the same. You reach the blank wall of the inconceivable. If there be any person of the present day so ignorant as not to recognize the value of astrology and base his judgment on materialistic grounds, let him read Herbert Spencer's First Principles. In that book, which ranks with David Hume's as one of the most masterly treatises on nature as seen by scientific skepticism, he will find it proven with admirable lucidity that no possible theory of God or of nature is satisfactory to the mind. Nay, more, he shows that no such theory is even intelligible to the mind. As practical people, we shall therefore do well not to worry ourselves too much about metaphysics. We had better acquiesce ourselves. We had better acquiesce in the statement that everything is relative, and confine ourselves to observing and measuring the forces which we perceive in action. It is not an argument against astrology to inquire why does the movement of certain planet produce certain effects. We do not know any more than the physicist knows why a nerve contracts on the application of electric current. We do not wish to make so philosophical an inquiry. We are only concerned to inform ourselves as to whether it acts. A theoretical a priori considerations must not be advanced in astrology any more than any other science. Such considerations have been the curse of every science. They have done more to retard the progress of science than any other form of human folly. The reader should study the works of T.H. Huxley on this point to be an indisputable proof of the attributes of divinity. Whenever they came across a fact which appeared out of harmony with this preconceived idea of his nature, they tried to explain away the fact. But as facts are chills that win a dig, Scott's Children That Will Not Be Beaten, from Robert Burns' A Dream. Chills that wanna dig, chills that win a dig, ding, chills that win a ding. They saw that their castle in the air must tumble, and consequently resorted to the expedient of burning any such person alive who appeared interested in the discovery of awkward facts. Such a policy is naturally suicidal. Now, astrology has nothing whatever to do with any theories of nature. Like every sane science, it contents itself with the true scientific method. Suppose we are on a shooting range. We see a puff of smoke and hear a report in another part of the ground. Almost immediately afterwards, we hear a bell ring or see a flag wave. There is no reason whatever to suppose any connection between these events. They may be pure coincidences. However, suppose we see the same thing happen 100 times running, or even suppose that we see the flash and hear the shot 100 times, and that on 70 or 80 occasions the waving of the flag followed. The situation becomes entirely different. We have then a right to say that there is, in all probability, some casual connection. It would, however, still remain incomprehensible to us why a flash in one part of Earth should cause the waving of a flag in another part. There would be nothing to tell us that there was a preconcerted arrangement between the shooter and the marker, even if we were subsequently informed that such was the case. We would still be at a loss for the motives of such an arrangement. And in order to discover these, we should have to dive into a dozen sciences: ballistics, history, ethnology, and I know not how many more. At the end of all that, we should find ourselves up against the great metaphysical problem which we have already dismissed as improbable. But it would be quite fair to the observer. For the observer to draw certain practical deductions. If he noticed that the flag was waved immediately after the shot was fired on 1,000 consecutive occasions, he would be perfectly justified in predicting that the next time the flash came, the waving of the flag would follow. This prediction, like any other, would not be a certainty. It would only be a very strong probability. But humanity habitually acts on probabilities of this kind. If I walk down Fifth Avenue, a motor car may smash a wheel or skid in some other way, go wrong and interfere with my peaceful promenade upon the sidewalk. But I shall be a great fool if I avoid the sidewalk for any such reason. In other words, I habitually predict that no such accident will occur. So far things have fallen out according to my expectations. Now, when an astrologer predicts that a person with Mars in the 7th house afflicted will make an unhappy marriage, if he marry at all, he is employing precisely the same qualities of sound reason and judgment based on scientific observation and comparison in innumerable facts. He has observed and noted and tabulated. Filed among his papers are hundreds of horoscopes in which this position occurs, and in every case the person born with this position has been unfortunate in wedlock. He is therefore absolutely justified, when he sees another such figure, in predicting no happy marriage. It must not be expected that any responsible astrologer claims to be absolutely right. There are extreme complexities in the study of astrology. It appears that there are certain unknown forces which may interfere with even the most probable judgment. There are times, for example, when a person may pass through very bad aspects without feeling any ill effects. For some reason or other, those aspects have not been excited to action. There are a dozen theories to account for this apparent irregularity. It is not possible in this brief introduction to go into them fully, but there are so many and so subtle forces to take into consideration that it is occasionally impossible to divine astrologically why any given event should take place, even when the matter is considered after it has happened. There is another and exceedingly important point. Forewarned is forearmed. If a person appears to be in danger of drowning, one can avert the threat by keeping him away from the water. This is one of the most useful functions of astrology. It may be, let us grant, that the astrologer is mistaken, that there is not really any danger to be supposed, but it cannot do his client any harm to act sensibly, and every good astrologer is full of worldly wisdom and common sense. The considerations apply especially in horary consultations, when the astrologer is sought on account of some pressing anxiety or trouble, which natural good judgment as the consultant may possess, is at such times interfered with by the disturbance of his mind, and the counsel of the astrologer cannot be otherwise than beneficial. However, it would be absurd to rate so low the claim of the astrologer to help mankind on certain main points, such as the connection is of the personal appearance with the sign rising at the time of birth, or the position of the planet, the sun, or the position of the sun in the zodiac, as the influence of Saturn in the 10th house or Mars in the 7th, and 1,000 others. The probability of cause and connection is so enormous that no sane person who studies the facts with intelligence and without prejudice can fail to convince that astrology is a positive, constructive, and all but infallible science. Just as in fractional distillation, the first vapors which come over are very different in character to those which arise from the application of greater heat, so the successive formation of the planets has given them very varied natures. The subtle influence which is disengaged from them and shed upon Earth by their rays has been carefully studied, and it will be described in the pages of this book. There is nothing particularly repugnant to reason in admitting such a theory, but one has the obvious analogy, better known departments of physics. We have daily experience of the difference in the effect produced by the rays of the sun and those of the moon, and we have only to extend this conception in order to include the outer planets, but there is an a priori difficulty in accepting the postulate that the aspects of the planets have any effect.